friends. Now, this is me streaming from my lounge room now, and my 2 camera setup isn't working. What I originally thought was going to be the thing that solved all my problems didn't work, which is unfortunate. But I still want to kind of do some of the content that I'm going to go through today. What I'm going to do first is adjust the camera. I don't know what I've done to it, but it's sitting on a funny angle. And then I'm going to do some first time unboxing. I need to tilt it this way just a touch. This thing is so... I think that's better. Because I need to see a bit of the table. The whole point of the second camera is the second camera lets you see like a down view. You see what's going on. Did I just bump it so it's now? Whatever. Well, fuck. Alright, you can see a little bit more of me in it. I am here. And you get to watch me struggle with packaging. This first one is Runika. You can see my tripod in the reflection. This first one is Runika and the 6-sided spell books. This is actually one I'm pretty excited about. A game by Shannon Kelly, another local Australian creator. I really wasn't kidding when I said I was going to struggle with the packaging. I swear to God, shrink wrap is one of my great weaknesses. Let me get my scissors 1 sec. The whole stream is just an hour of me being unable to open packages. It's literally a daily struggle. So, the box is actually really nice. It's got a linen finish on it, which you probably won't be able to see on the camera because my camera is not that great. But the whole thing is kind of designed to look like a book. So that's kind of the spine, and you can see on this side, if I bring it a bit closer to you, you can see kind of like the folded pages, and it's got stuff inserted in it, which I do think is a cool effect. And a little bit later I'll show you another game that has done a similar thing, and you can then compare. Now this is 1 to 4 players, which is usually the kind of size that I go for. Usually 2. 2 is usually what I'm doing. I only have 1 friend apparently. I'm trying to think if there's anything really important to point out. So this was manufactured in China by Long Pack Games. Now, I'm not sure how familiar you'll be with Long Pack Games, but Long Pack Games was the manufacturer that did my first game, Castles of Calira. So I have personal experience working with these people. Let's open up this book here. That's very difficult. Here we go. Okay. So we've got Punch Card. Punch Card is fantastic. It doesn't cost that much compared to a lot of other components. Like if I was going to do plastic molds or like metal pieces, this is going to be way cheaper. And you get to have your art on it exactly how you want. As you can see here, what looks like students, I assume. I'll bring it a bit closer for you. You can make out some characters there, and is like a money system. It's a bit blurry. But my game Spaceship Redoubt did the same thing. Originally, we had some kind of default plastic molded aquarium gravel type shit in there, and we changed it to punch card like this, so we could have the dilithium crystals or whatever look exactly how we want, and we could use the same ship from the box art to match, which I felt was important. I'll put this to the side. We have the first rule book. We have the second rule book. It features some gorgeous art on it and a comic on the back. That's kind of cool. From what I understand, there has since been a novel or something written about this game. Try and flick through it so you can see this whole thing's kind of a this is like a quick start guide that is done in the form of a comic that introduces the different characters and stuff, which is something super unique in my opinion, and I think it's done very well, being attacked by a flying creature at the same time. And then we have the big rule book, which is like more typical, which is your big pictures and your big text rather than a comic book. Oh, it has an index on the back. That's super helpful. In the middle of a game, you're like, oh shit, what does this thing do again? You look through the index. I feel like more games should use that. The amount of time that I spend just absolutely wandering around. We played Root last weekend, and we were trying to figure out if woodland creatures' sympathy needed to go on a square, and we just couldn't find it anyway. We couldn't find where it said in the rulebook, and what we ended up finding was a little picture of like the demonstration or whatever, and that was kind of the best we could do. Minor note on here, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. There's a bit of a crease. Unless if I can get the light on it, maybe you might be able to see it. I can't tell. There's a bit of a crease in the back of the book. Not sure what from. It doesn't seem to like damage it in a way that really matters. It's just you can see that there's a crease there, or like I don't know what you call it. It's like an earthquake. Cracks in the ground on the thing without it really being damaged. I can't really tell what that's from, but it's otherwise fine. It doesn't really impact the art. I've actually got, it looks like, and on the front it looks like they've rested a disc on it. I can see where it's kind of cut the art, like taken paint off it. There's no way you'll be able to see it on that game. It's super minor. And I'm not the kind of board game collector that gives a shit about the kind of condition that my games are in. But when you're dealing with the manufacturer, and Longpack is one of the biggest ones, for you to get something from them and notice obvious mistakes. Like for example, the sample that I got from Spaceship Redoubt, which wasn't Longpack, when we got it, there was a staple in the rulebook. So if you have a look at this one, it has two staples in the spine, one at the top, one at the bottom. There was a staple in the rulebook that was crooked, so the book wouldn't shut properly. And I pointed this out, and they're like, "Oh, that'll never happen again. We don't usually have issues with that." And it never did happen again. But now it's something that I look at. You know what I mean? Okay, next we have a bunch of boards. Now these are super unique boards, and that's why they don't stack very well, because it has a raised surface here. I think if I hold it up like this, you'll kind of be able to see that this circle is raised on it, and that is because there is a ring that sits on the circle. You can see that it's nice and snug and has the ability to rotate. Another thing that I think is super cool about this game, let me peel that off. This is something that I would be worried about being damaged over time. Not so much it disconnecting from the board, but the top layer peeling off as you probably find. But again, this is the same kind of board that the punch card maybe a little bit thicker in quality, difficult to tell. And as you can see, there's like dings in the side, right, from probably where the machine's cut it or it's been pushed into something else. And so we have 4 boards, each of which has a character icon that matches something from the punch card. Now, and has a cool little book motif on the back, which I do like. Now, a lot of my analysis today and what we're going to be going through today is nothing about how good a game is, nothing about whether or not I haven't played this. I'm excited about playing this, but I haven't played this. Obviously, I just open it now. But the point is to go through and have a look at the different components and you do a comparison and have a look at what kind of options you do have when you're making stuff, because there is some games that are like literally by the numbers. You buy dice, you print out something on a board, and that's the whole game. And it's not very inventive. And this one is one that is. The boards, I don't think you'll see many things like that. We have the rings. And then we have a flying cat meeple in there. I don't know if you can really see that super well, which is pretty cute. That's a custom cut, and I don't know, you'll probably really be able to tell, but the back legs are cut out, and the cut is really, really fine, and the details on the wings are also cut out, and that cut is really, really fine. And considering that, it looks amazing. The fact that it's come out so clean like that is really impressive. I have some other custom meeples in other games that I'll be able to show you in a minute. We've then got some tarot sized cards, is my guess, or jumbo. Difficult to tell without putting something else next to it. Which are rules, which are scoring devices, I think, because there's not that many of them. I don't know. It looks pretty nice. Look at the art on that. It's pretty gorgeous, actually. One of the things that I look for in cards, and I'll be able to show you in Moonshell, is a thing called miscut. If you're a Magic the Gathering player, you'd be familiar with miscut cards where the actual border of the card is shifted somewhat and you'll see part of another card on it. These look great. The cut looks exactly like you'd expect a die line. I had the same experience. Castles of Calira has 18 cards in it. None of them are miscut in any of the boxes that I've opened. And printer drift is apparently really common. So for a long pack to have never shown up with any printer drift for me is really impressive. That's one of the things that I've noticed with the Game Crafter and why I intentionally make sure I design stuff that when I'm making things with them that is not going to be affected by printer drift at all. And this is a good example. The border for this has 4 clouds, right? And then an actual border on the back. On the back has this actual black line border and 4 clouds in the corner. Now you probably wouldn't notice super much if the clouds move at all. But you might notice if the border on one side is really, really thin and really, really thick on the other side, which, looking at this top card, it looks perfect, honestly. Which I personally think is very impressive. We've then got some custom dice with symbols on it, which I believe is the entire gameplay boils down to this. And these are really good quality. The thing, and when we come to Sagrada, you'll see me make a comment on that, is that getting a bunch of colorful dice costs nothing. Printing onto a bunch of boards costs basically nothing. And so having them, it feels kind of stock components. Having something like this, where I don't know if you can really see the symbols on it, unless I bring it really close for you, is really, really impressive and adds a lot of production value to the game, in my opinion. We have 4 different colors, and the 4 different colors of the dice match the 4 different colors of the ring. We've then got, ooh, it's a bag. It's quite a nice bag, actually. And it says Ex Acedi Lunion Academ. Oh, it's an M. Academ. The top parts of the M are very tall, so it looks like a H. Ex Academ Lunion. So I don't know if that is a font problem or if that is a printing problem, but the M is particularly skinny. I think if the M was wider, it might be easier to read as an M. But I think it's screen printing, maybe, I'm not sure, onto the bag. Adds a logo, really nice and custom. When we get to one of our other games, I think I have another one I can compare with that later. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of half open stuff, go through things one at a time, and then as I get to later games, I'll come back and be like, ooh, remember this? This is quite a nice bag. I've seen a lot of really dodgy default ones, and you can kind of tell the quality is not good. This one you can see has really strong stitching up in the corner and along the rim, so when you pull it tight, it's still good, which I do like. So far this game has been very impressive when it comes to production quality. I believe I have just one last thing, which is some small cards. I'm not going to rip it open and pull them out, but it has the same thing where it doesn't look like there's any real printer drift on this. All the symbols are super readable. The art, like the ink quality is really good. All that kind of stuff. And the last bit, which I feel like doesn't get a lot of press, is the insert. I think that's probably a better look at it, which perfectly fits all of the components. Which I think more and more, the more custom that you go, the more important that becomes. And you can see it fits super easily into the box, right? And they've even gone so far as to put a little bit of detailing. I don't know if you'll be able to see quite in there, but in this trough, there's a little bit of detailing. Maybe you can see on the back because it's raised. Try and show that for you. You can see maybe a little bit of it, where it's got the same pattern as the boards on it. Now I'm going to attempt to put all this back in where it belongs on the first try, which will probably be a fail, but whatever, we'll see. We've got the 4 dice. When in here, we have the small cards. There's a space for another set of small cards, which might be an expansion, but I don't think that there was actually anything in there. We have these grooves. Is it going to sit? Okay. We have these grooves, which is where the punch tokens will go. But I'm not going to punch the tokens, otherwise this stream will go forever. We have our cat, but because the bag is really good, I don't know that it really fits in its spot. We have the boards, which should, because the boards are a super irregular shape, it's, like, if you're not careful, I guess it would fit in there really weirdly. We have the 2 rule booklets that go on top of the boards, and then this is how the box should be packed, right? It's quite flat, because the punch card won't be in there, which is fine. And that is Runika. Now, you can kind of see if there's anything, because I've mentioned miscut so many times with the cards. I'm just checking if there's any really obvious art drift on the box. The way the box is printed is like an X, right? And it's folded down onto it, so you can kind of see in this corner where the, I don't know if it'll be really obvious or not, but where the lines of the book don't line up, there's actually a seam there of one thing folded over on top of another. And if you were super duper pedantic, you could line them up so that it does work perfectly, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, that is Runika. Put that on the floor. Next up is That Time You Killed Me. This is by Peter C. Hayward. Is there any graphic design art by Jorov? This is Pandasaurus. Now, Longpack and Pandasaurus are probably the 2 biggest manufacturers, in my opinion, or from what I've heard. I don't know. On first look, I don't know if this will really be obvious on the camera, but the box, if you look really in that top right corner, you can see that there's a gap, which means the top lid, like the top part of the telescoping lid, is maybe 1 millimeter or 0.5 millimeter bigger on every side than the box, which means that it'll be easier to open. Because you saw I struggled quite a lot getting the lid off of Runika. See Is it big enough for me to puncture with the scissors? No, that's fine. Which, I don't know, it feels like a great amount because it's like I can see it and it's obvious that there's a gap there. But if it means that I can open it and close it without much hassle, then I'm not going to complain. And that's probably a good thing. So the other thing that I'm super noticing here is on the front, Pandasaurus has a big ass logo of theirs on it. Alright, we have Pandasaurus on the front, on this side. We have Pandasaurus on every side of the board. It's really super noticeable. Now this one, I guess the quick pitch for this game is I have good news and bad news. The good news, you've invented time travel. The bad news, someone is going to murder you and steal your invention. And it goes on, there's a bit more to it. But this is one that I was really excited about because the gameplay seems super unique. There we go. That was actually quite difficult to get the lid off compared to what I was expecting. Okay, we have a humongous rulebook. It's bigger than me. Oh god, it's quite unyieldly. But oh man, the quality of it is much more like is much thicker printed than the Runika rulebook. Ooh, some nice art in there. Trying not to like dwell on the specific contents of it because there's 3 different setups for the same game through the rulebook. The ink and coloring is really good. Yeah, but yeah, it is a much thicker I don't know, photo paper, matte paper, whatever that they've used. This is like lore, cool little making sound, and there's a letter to me from me in the future, which is kind of cool. And so this, I think, is amazing. Now, what a lot of people probably don't know is that if you get a game and you're missing a piece, you email them, and they'll send out the piece to you. Now, story time, I'm a bit of a scumbag. I accidentally lost a piece from my game Azul, and I emailed them, and I said, hey, I got this copy of Azul, and it's missing the just blue, like light blue square. And they're like, no worries, we'll send you one out. I'm like, yes. And then I found the piece that I lost, and I moved house because it was hidden away in a really hard to find spot. But it meant that I could keep playing the game. And the manufacturer is like, well, really not losing out on that much on it, and it means that I can keep playing the game. So I don't know. Quick tip for those of you that aren't that worried about it. And this is ads. Yeah, Machikoro 2 on the back there. Ads from more games from Pandasaurus games, such as The Mind, which is so Runika had no ads in it. I pulled everything out of the box. There wasn't any ads. There wasn't even like, hey guys, I'm the creator and this is my other game ads. Nothing. So we have 3 game boards, and what makes these unique is it has a divot cut into each one. You can kind of see it lining up over my face there on each side. It's really fucking difficult to see. Each of them has that. Alright. And it's relevant because this piece in particular, you can see it's a square, it's got an arrow on it, is used to indicate a particular board. The one that I have in there is a little bent, but I don't think it will really matter. These look like they are, I want to say a mold injected, I might be wrong. But they're actually quite nice. The quality is actually quite good. The colouring, black's really solid. The problem with the black is that you lose some of the, like your eyes can't pick up some of the details of the piece quite as well. But they're going for like a chess 2.0 kind of a motif where square board, square pieces, the strategy elements to it. But they are quite nice, with the exception of my white one being slightly bent. It looks quite good, and that's probably because of the way that it comes out of the mold. They have to like actually pull it, and in the same way that whenever I do punch card, I'm like super careful because I know that if you fuck it up pulling it out the first time, then it's like that forever. Now this game features 4 different modules. Whenever you see a review for this game, they only ever pull out the first module. For this one, I'm going to peek into the second module. This is kind of like a printed box. I've got one like this, like the exact same construction that I've made games in, like my whole game in from the Game Crafter, and they are pretty sturdy, depending on the thickness of the card. Now in here is, so this is like a plastic envelope that you can reseal. It's quite sturdy. It's not like throwaway plastic packaging at all. And has 2 cards in it as my best estimate. And the art on it is actually quite nice. I don't think that showing you this tells you anything about what happens in the game, but that's okay. And then the rest of the box is specific components for that module. And this one comes with, oh wow, they're actually super detailed. It's like a like an Oni sculpture. You can see some parts where the flash hasn't been removed as part of removing it from the mold, which is fine. If you're a miniature painter or whatever, then you're like familiar with having to remove that on your own. It's not, you know, it comes out of a sprue or whatever. But there's no other, and that's just on the base, right? There's no other obvious parts where the thing has been connected, has been removed. And this is the same problem where the white one and the yellow one look amazing because you can see all the cool details in the cut. The black one, I can't see shit. I literally have to work so hard to see any of the details in it, which is disappointing that you lose some of the cool quality and production elements and stuff just because the color is so dark. Doesn't mean it's bad, like it's still there, it's just hard to see. Now this is a game that I am very excited to play because it has a lot of replay abilities in the different module, which I'm looking forward to. But I also think it's gonna just be an absolute brain fuck of a game. From what I understand of it, it is very chess-like and strategic and can be quite complicated. But I'm really keen to rip into it and have a look at it. And so that's kind of what we got here. This one has much less crazy custom components, but it's still one of the biggest manufacturers we have, which I think is interesting. I think compared to Runika, which is long pack, the rulebook from Pandasaurus is the big standout. The thicker print, I don't know if the thicker print is intentional because the rulebook is quite large, but it feels sturdier and more like an actual booklet than a pamphlet or a flimsy throwaway ad, like compared to the actual like this. Like this is super duper thin. ASMR, I shake the pamphlet at you. Because it doesn't need to turn, it doesn't need to be durable. It's like I could put this in the bin right now. I already know what their email address is. And oh, it's actually got printing on the inside of the box. Let me pull out Runica to give you a nice comparison because this one had it as well, and I quite liked it. Let me pull the fucking lid off. Okay. So, I know it's not super detailed. I'm trying to see if they do look all the same. but it has a little piece of art on it. Now, what we were talking about with the printer drift, you can see the difference between the bottom and the side, right? Yeah, this is a reflection. The difference between the bottom and the side is pretty close to perfectly lined up. It overlaps in an amount that doesn't matter, right? There's pretty much no drift on it because the way that it's cut, the sides fold up around it. So there's always going to be a tiny room for error based on how it folds, but it looks really, really solid. And then on the side of the Runika, you've actually got an even more complicated one where it's not repeated on each side, and it looks like it kind of tells a small story as you rotate around the box, right? Which is super cool. I think I've shown it backwards. But on the book corner ends, I'll put the lid back on so I can show you. Actually, using the lid, I'll show you. The book corner ends, which is this, it overlaps differently to the other side. Is that upside down? I don't know. Does it matter? Probably not. I'll do my best to put it back how it was. Which is hard to do. The printing on the side usually isn't something that people put. You don't put important information on there. You don't put something that, because it's not going to be super seen, you know. And all the stuff on the outside of the box is about it being sold in a retail space. It's all about being seen by the customer. And so the inside black of the walls is not super noticeable, but the outside bright orange, the bright orange is what will grab your attention on this game. The problem that Runica has is that at a distance, it all, I'll hold it back here, you can't really, you know, all of it just disappears with the exception of this tiny blue space. So if the box is shown at the front, right, with the exception of that tiny blue space, everything else kind of fades into this brown. And it just looks like a big brown blob. Whereas this is super fucking eye-catchy. When I purchased this at my LGS, it was in fact front-facing, and I saw it and I knew that this was PDC Hayward's game because I remember seeing all the release stuff and I was super keen to get it, and it was the only copy that they had there. And in fact, I've put the lid on upside down. And I spotted it because it was super obvious, you know. And a lot of the other games on the shelf at the time have, and they're like fantasy games, they have like this blue and this green kind of motif, right? And this bright orange and a kind of cream and red and black, very, very obvious on the shelf. And I think when you're designing a box cover, that's one of the things you want to think about. And it's something that I've heard a lot of other designers talk about. I think next we're going to look at Reef. Reef is a game that I adore. I put the lid on this one wrong too. Anyway, this is kind of what I was talking about with your blue and green, right? And there's a couple of other games that I saw there that had the same sort of thing. And Moonshell, which I have here as well, is a similar big blue box. Now, I wanted to show Reef. Now, Next Move Games, the logo on the front, I believe, is the publisher, not the manufacturer. See if I can find out. I don't know if the manufacturer is. Next Move also does Azul, a game that I like very much. Put this over here. This is the rulebook. I actually managed to get this to table for the first time last weekend, which I was very excited about. If you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen a couple of photos of the games that we brought out. Development by Next Move Games, made in China. Doesn't specifically say where. No, it doesn't. It just says made in China. It doesn't say what the manufacturer is. Interesting, because I was kind of keen to find out what it was. I might have to look that up later. And so we have a really thin pamphlet-y kind, like same as that ad from the Pandasaurus box, kind of rulebook. But it's a one page, it doesn't need a staple on it, so I guess It's not. Can you go away? Excuse me. I'm trying to film a show here. So it's because it doesn't need a staple on it. It's not that many pages, but it's roughly the same size. Can I say it's the same size? It's 80% the same size as the last one. But the colors really do pop on this, and the actual inking and printing quality on the rulebook is insane. If it had more pages, maybe it would need more. Now, this has been very poorly organized and put in here by me, especially because I turned it on its side, but I'm going to try and go through the different pieces one by one. So we have player boards. Now, these did not need to be punched out. No, these did need to be punched out. There was 4 different punch cards. Each had 1 board in it and other things, the money tokens and stuff. And that's how you get the really, I don't know if you can really tell, but it's not a square. It's got a wavy outside edge, which I really like, actually. It's not needed mechanically. Like in That Time You Killed Me, it has a notch so that you can put a piece there. This is just because it looks nice. It doesn't need anything to sit in there. It doesn't have to match up with anything, and it's fine. And you have 3 that are the same, which is these 3, and this one that I already took out, which has a starfish on it. And the starfish is how you know who the first player is. But the other thing to note is that they don't line up either. They're not... Oh, does it? Ooh, maybe it does. Maybe I've just had it wrong this whole time. Kinda, maybe? Maybe I've got it sort of... Yeah, I've got 2 of them that line up. Okay. When I initially did it, I was like, oh, these don't match at all. I can't get this happening. It looks like there's 2 different cuts. And they... Yeah, it looks like there's 2 different cuts and they match up in pairs. Which is... Makes sense because it means that you don't need that many knives to cut it differently. Okay, then we have the big thing that I think makes Reef unique is that it has these coral pieces. Now you probably, even if I bring it really close to the camera, you're not gonna fucking see that very well because my camera is shit, unfortunately. It's great for recording people. It's not very good for recording detailed things. But these pieces are like a thick plastic, and it's got like a Lego brick top and a spot that it will sit so that you can build towers of them and they won't fall over, because that is part of the gameplay. You make stacks of 4 high, and they've got 4 different colors. You've got orange, which is like a color, 4-leafed clover, noughts and crosses kind of a shape, which is completely unique. I don't know that I'll ever see another component like this one. You've got the green blob. It doesn't really have a shape. It's like a weird pentagon, wobbly pentagon. You've got the sunflower, because it's like a cookie cutter shape with like the ridges and stuff. And you've got the violets. Looks kind of like a ship blade, like a propeller. I don't know. I'm doing a really shitty job of describing these to you. But each of them is super unique, and sitting on the board and with the section of Reef that you're building has a fantastic table presence, and looks gorgeous, which is really interesting that such a clunky plastic piece can look so gorgeous compared to stuff like punch card, compared to stuff like the injection mold chest pieces, which I think is super interesting. Next up we have punch card money. It's pretty much exactly the same as the ones from Runika, but the difference is that these are not standard circles. They're a little bit wobbly, kind of fits the theme. And there is some cards on the card. Can I just make it? I'll just pull one out. And the cards are quite nice. They are designed in such a way that you would not notice the printer drift. Because each one, I don't know if you can really tell, but the border is really short on one side and kind of long on the other side, and you wouldn't really notice. And the back could be kind of shifted a little bit and you wouldn't really notice, which is, I think, is clever. If you know about printed drift and you kind of know how much of an allowance you can have, and you can then you can design something where it doesn't matter and then it looks good. Now the last thing is that this doesn't have a plastic vacuum seam mold like Runica does. This has a folded cardboard insert, which is super basic. One big, one small section. And as you can see, it fits in there like a mess. I don't know that having a plastic injection mold for this would be better. It already has the baggies for the plastic components, which is probably enough. And when playing the game, we pull the pieces out of the box, and when we're taking the ones that we need anyway, so it's not like messy. But the player boards don't sit in there very nicely. The money is kind of everywhere, and so if you're not careful, like I am, or I'm holding it sideways to show it off to you, then it's going to be quite messy on the inside. And I don't know that you'll be able to see it because it's quite dark, but it has a reef on the side. So far, 3 out of 3 games have had minor printing on the insides of the box. That doesn't sit very well. Is there anything important on the back? Does it actually say the manufacturer on the back? It just says made in China. Nope. That's interesting. So what it does mean is that it's not Pandasaurus and it's not long pack. So it could be a smaller independent third one or something. I don't know. Next up, we're going to do Moonshell. Moonshell is a pretty new game. This one was on Kickstarter. I backed it on Kickstarter. Super excited about this game and I'm playing it. I really, really like this one. It's... Oh, fucking hell. There we go. It also has a very difficult to remove lid. Okay, so first thing, rulebook. Not as thick a page as the That Time You Killed Me rulebook, but it's still maybe double the thickness that Reef has. And it's quite a lot of pages because there is quite a lot of different, there's like a few different variations and a whole bunch of different characters, powers and stuff they need to list. But it's the same to staple. And I don't know that that will show up on camera, maybe. But if you have a look, yeah, you should be able to see that there's white scratch marks where the staple goes in. From the way that, yeah, you should be able to tell. And there's kind of, all along that line even, there's wear and tear from whatever's folded it down. Now, actually, does it tell me where this was manufactured? Is there like a credits? Doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like it. They actually have a live list of all their Kickstarter backers on their website, and if you go and look, you will find me on there. It's kind of cool. Rather than having 8 pages of a rulebook dedicated to putting people's names on it. So I don't know. I don't know where this one was manufactured. The box itself, the width of the outer part of the box is double any other thing in my collection. It's super thick. I don't know why that is. It's quite unique. We have the board. It's a non-standard shape. This was not punch card. This came in one piece. This is kind of the center point of the game. All of the punch cards sits in here and it rotates based on what you're doing. We then have a lot of cards. Now, they are quite difficult to get out now, all of a sudden. What the fuck? Okay, I can't actually get these out. So this has a lovely vacuum seal insert that lets me get the first handful of cards out, and then it is fucking useless after that because I can't get the rest out. But I wanted to show you. Nope. So I'm gonna have to figure out how the fuck I can get these. Try and twist it or push it from the other side or something. The whole thing bends quite well. So there's a lip to put your finger in to help get cards out that goes halfway. When we unpacked it the first time, did I get some? No. Okay, I got some. Jesus Christ. It's like a... Here we go. There's a divot underneath that the cards don't go in. That I can't even push on that to get the cards out because they're resting on this layer. And the thing that you put your finger in only goes halfway deep in that layer. Super annoying, but whatever. Not something I was intending to show off on camera, but is now abundantly clear. That's two of the cards I want to show off. The pink ones are super obvious, but this one has miscut cards that I did want to show. And the reason why they're super obvious is, and you'd think so, right? So this is a fully green border. So you're like, oh, I don't give a shit about the printer shift at all because the background is solid. It can move in any direction and it's fine. But the bleed size, which is this extra space around the outside of a card to allow for printer shift, must have been too small because I have two cards that are completely miscut. I don't know how obvious that one is to see. Bring it really close maybe. You should see that on the right hand side, or my right hand side, maybe it's your left, is a big white line. And that's because it's shifted a little bit when it's been cut. Now, I can tell it's completely miscut because the same white line shows up on the other side of the card as well. And this one is the same, but it's not as obvious. But why it shows up so badly is because the whole thing is a solid color, and if the bleed moved and it cut, you wouldn't notice anything. But it's moved past the bleed. You know, like I haven't lost any text, and you can actually see that it is quite snug up against the other side. But like I said, this doesn't impact the gameplay. It doesn't mean the components are bad. It means that it is something that when you are designing a game, you need to be mindful of because it can happen. I have one green card. I'm trying not to... There's like 10 different categories of cards and I need to not mix them up. Okay. Being a long-term Magic player, I have seen many miscut cards, and most of them much worse than that. So this is a different material bag to the one that we saw in Runica. The one in Runica is more like felt, much more starchy. This one is more like cotton, like an itchy t-shirt. I really don't know the names of the materials for these. Like an itchy t-shirt, and is quite solid. Has the the double drawstring instead of the one-sided one, and inside is all of the punch card components that I've put in there. Because there's two sets of punch card components, it comes with a built-in expansion that I've put to the side because I wanted to play it a bunch of times without the expansion before adding them. We've got a big circle punch card chocolate piece. It's chocolate brown, which tells you the direction the board is allowed to spin, and our mer meeples. Now I don't. Bring that a bit closer. It's a bit more obvious. It is in the shape of a mermaid. Now the cut for this isn't as complicated as the cat from Runika, right? It's really only this inside bit that will be a bit complicated, but it looks very, very clean, very, very clean, and it comes with 6 different ones, each in a different color. You can kind of see the wood grain, or the way, maybe it's the way that the paint has stuck to it oddly right in the divot. But like I said, this is such a nothing thing. I'm just trying to point out stuff that, just because here it's not a problem, you might design something that has a much more picky pattern, and when it's cut and painted, it has a much worse version of the problem. You know what I mean? We have custom character boards that I've thrown on the table. Custom character boards that are different. It's like a daytime, nighttime kind of a thing. Each of them has a light side and a dark side. Now, these were not punched. I didn't have to punch board this, but they're all a distinct, unique shape, which, as you can imagine, is difficult to keep in a box if you like literally struggling to put it into the thing. If you don't, yeah, there we go. If you don't have a good insert, it can be quite difficult to store stuff of irregular sizes. And then the next and other piece that we have is the player board, which is a treasure chest. Now, what's cool about the treasure chest is, I don't know if you'll super notice, but there's divots on the side and the top. It's kind of cut out in such a shape that really does feel like a sort of open treasure chest. And then your pieces that you draft will go here, and it has a rules reminder here. So the natural design split of the bottom of the chest and the top of the chest creates 2 sections that they've used to great advantage. And I think that this is a very cleverly designed piece. I think that's everything. There's a lot of empty space in the thing. Maybe there's extra bits that I've put in there wrong. I'm now really hesitant to put the cards back in there because I'm never going to get them out. Okay. So this one, components wise, pretty interesting and uniquely different to the others. And the lid of the box is super thick also. You can see the front. Okay, now compared to the others, this one does not have art really. It's sorta. It has it's like 98% a solid color, and then it has on only 2 sides a little bit of the like reef fronds. You can see like the reef fronds on it, which you probably could have just not done. It could have just been a solid color, but that's fine. Compared to Runica, which has like the really detailed thing that comes up. Milk is here. Hey, Milk. I'm talking about board games. Alright, and that's Moonshell. We've then got Root. Do I do Root next? I've already shown it to you. This is Root. This is a fantastic game made by Leader Games. Stream content. Keith struggles to take the lids off boxes for an hour. So we've got a lot of different printed. Well, this is quite a thick box as well. This is maybe 80% the same thickness, like just slightly thinner than Moonshell. But the other two, the box itself was quite thin in comparison. But this is a heavier game, and it has a rulebook that's about the same thickness as the Moonshell one, but has a lot of pages in it. This is a much more complicated game. 2 staples, same kind of design. This one doesn't have damage to the fold from the stapler or from the folding, like the Moonshell one did. And it's possible it might not show up because it has this cream outer color. We then have, we have a single pamphlet sort of printed. This might show up in your mailbox, which is like a super quick playthrough of the game where it instructs you what you'll do on your turn as a player as it goes through the different things, which is really good. For more complicated games, having a simulated game for players to play through is really good. We've then got a fucking A4 sheet of reflex paper, which is a quick introduction. I don't fully understand what this does. It lists the components of what's in the box. Okay. Making sense of the game. We have the big rulebook. What the fuck? When we played, all I did was use the small rulebook. I didn't even fucking look at the big rulebook. Maybe that's where I fucked up. This looks like the fucking Magic the Gathering rule set. You got rule 10.5.2, you know. I didn't even know that was a thing. And maybe I should have if we played a few games. Anyway, we have the different player boards. Now this one is quite stuck in here, so I'll pull them all out. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so these are quite large, and it has a few different sections on it. You've got the top half, which is instructions on what you're supposed to be doing on your turn, the bottom half, and the middle bit, which you're putting punch card onto it to indicate your progress. And then this is a pile for, I believe they're poker-sized cards. So that gives you a kind of a reference for how big this is. This is a poker-sized card. You could probably fit 2 on here, and you could probably fit 4 across, maybe. And each of them is that same size. Yeah, so 4 across, because you can see on the bird one, there's spot for 4 different ones at the top. And the coloring on this is gorgeous. There's no, it's got a linen finish on it. There's no obvious scoring or damage. This particular copy has been played twice, maybe 3 times in total. It's only a year old, I believe. Kind of outing myself on not playing that many board games. Look, it's hard, okay, when you have no friends. No one wants to play board games with you, but random people online will abuse you and play Valorant at literally any time of the day. Where's the justice in that? So here is a multi-fold board that is fucking, as you can see, very confusing. Okay. Whew. And it doesn't quite rest very well unless if you play it a lot of times and you unfold it a lot. My one has not been played enough times for it to rest, and you can, I don't know if you really see that on the camera, but it's like this. And it's huge. I can't even fit the whole thing on the table that I've cut out. And then there's a different art on the back. But, so the way that it looks like this one is manufactured is that there is a sheet of paper, perhaps, maybe a thick paper, that is cut and glued onto each of the boards, and is creased where it will fold and stuff like that. Because you can see on the outside there's a little bit of extra space, so that this could in theory move a little bit, and as long as it doesn't go over the line, then it will be fine. And there's even, like, if it did go over the line, there's empty space enough so that you're never going to lose important parts of the board. But on the back is not a sheet of paper printed on. So it might actually be an inside board. The front part is glued onto it, but the underside part is glued onto it and wrapped over for the top one to be glued onto. Kind of like wrapping a present. But you can see the back one has, I don't know if you'll really notice the difference. On the front, you can see there's an outer ring that has this kind of foresty pattern on it, because that's where the board kind of ends. On this one, it doesn't have that. So it does look like they've kind of overlapped it like this to keep it together. And it folds up to the side of the board. But this is huge. It's like insane. We've then got 2 gigantic dice, which go from 0 to 3. And there's, so it's 9-sided? And there's 3 of each copy? I don't know. I haven't seen, this probably don't even tell from that distance, but they're quite big compared to my big hands, I suppose. We've got, and now this is probably the #1 selling point of the game, if you've seen it anywhere online. Screen printed, custom shaped meeples. Really doesn't do it justice here, but so the mer meeples from Moonshell are mermaid shape, no screen printing. This is cat shaped, and they've printed a face on each one, and they're quite cute. Let me grab one of the mice. So the mice is this big ear shape and has an expression on it. And I personally think that if you're going to have wooden components like this, that is the way to go. Screen printing a face on one side really isn't that much extra to do, but it makes it so much more interesting to look at than a solid color piece. It also gives a front and a back. When we played last weekend, we had a mouse and a cat on the same place staring at each other, waiting to fight on the next turn, which in itself lends to helping tell a story. We then have a bunch of punch card, which is pretty similar to all the other ones we've seen so far. Each faction has their own punch card, so this is the orange one. And then we've got a bunch of cards. Now, you'll notice that was super fucking easy to pull out all of the cards from the box, because the insert that it has is quite interesting actually. It's got this big long ledge here that maybe you'll see better on this side. You see the top of where the art finishes is where the ledge goes to. On the other side, there's no ledge because you can see the actual grey of it. And the ledge is the difference between the width of the player boards and the width of the like main board folded, which is interesting in itself. And we have this big card section that has, you can see the huge finger holes that make it super easy to get the cards out. So I don't have the same problem that I did with Moonshell, where I literally get halfway down and I'm just fucked. And there's this, which is the spot for the dice, and then like a big empty section for the stuff in baggies to go. Looking at these cards, none of them are miscut from memory. This is another linen finish card, so they're a bit sturdier. They reflect the light quite a lot, so it's quite difficult for me to show you them on the camera. But there's also a whole bunch of reminder cards. There's tons of different stuff in there, and these are quite nice. The art on them is really gorgeous. For example, this is an angry mouse with a sword, which is quite cool. And so yeah, most I'm trying to think whether or not regular playing cards will often have a linen finish on it, so it's an easy comparison. But for example, Magic the Gathering cards do not have a linen finish. They have, I don't want to say a matte finish, but it's a much flatter one. Okay, so you can see how the board fits in here, and this is the kind of shoulder I was telling you about before. And the shoulder has a divot in it for my finger to help me pull the thing out. But it doesn't help me at all getting these fucking playboards out. And then we just put all of the laws of it on top. Now, this one is boards, punch card, wooden meeples, dice. There isn't really that much crazy custom shit in this game. compared to Runica, which has a unique shaped board. It has the ring boards. I mean, it's a ring. You don't actually put anything. It's not really a board. And it's got the custom dice. It's got the, all this kind of stuff. So it's really interesting to see. So, for example, Root and Reef, and what I'm going to show you in a second, Sagrada, I would say are much higher on the scale of being sold, of like big sellers, big companies. Oath, the sequel to this, made millions on Kickstarter from memory. Whereas Moonshell and Runica are much more indie. They're much more mid-level. Moonshell only recently came out and they ran a Kickstarter and it was successful. I wouldn't say it made them billions of dollars. They're not retiring easily. Moonshell did actually have a deluxe version where the board sat on something that made it rotate easier, but I didn't really care about that. Well, what's really interesting is that Runica, which is kind of a mid-level published game, it's Australian, we don't really compete that well with the American stuff, has had much more interesting production quality than a lot of the other games here. And the last game that I'm gonna show off is even higher again, is even crazier again. But this one is Sagrada. Now, what's really interesting, and the point that I'm trying to make with that, is that you'll see a lot of these Kickstarters that come out. The game is like really, really overproduced. It's got all these things. That's like crazy amounts of production quality. But then a lot of this stuff, like Sagrada, like Azul, which is boards and tiles. This is just boards and dice. It doesn't have anything too crazy in it. Congratulations of your victory playing Sagrada. Take a photo of this and post it on your socials. Probably not. This Sagrada does have the unique board, though. It has slots for the dice to sit in quite comfortably, which, okay, fair, I'll pay that. That is custom, just like the one from Runica. And there's cards. It's quite a big space for cards. Maybe I am missing some cards. I don't quite know what I've done here. They have cards. We have this big single drawstring bag which has really nice embroidery on it, right? And all of the dice aren't custom like the Runica ones. They're really generic single colored dice, right? Super cheap, super fucking cheap, right? But they still look really good. And the main cell, let me kind of fill one out so you can have a look of how it looks. And I'll try and get some of the different colors. There's a purple one, I have lots of green. I was trying to pick up a yellow one. And the blue one, that's red. Oh, I don't have a red one yet. Okay. So the kind of the cell is that you're building a stained glass window using these dice. I'm trying to show you. Can't properly. Right, now, for that effect to work, the dice don't have to be of a crazy custom quality, because it being slightly see-through, it hitting the light in the same kind of way adds to the effect. And it's a way to save a lot of money, because there's 36 dice in here, to save a lot of money on the production cost of something and use that somewhere else, like the board. The board itself is quite good and is quite clever, because you slide a card in here, right? So it's a triple layer board. You have the solid back, which has the divot cut in it. You have kind of halfway here, like a core, and it like runs along the outside, right? And then you have the top, which has the spots for the dice, and then the card will slip in there. I'll actually grab, I'm pretty sure I can put any card in there, and I'll slide it in there just so you can see. The card is now in there, and I'll pull it out quite easily using the divot. which is quite clever, right? So you spend all of your production quality making this one super special board, and you save lots of money on your run-of-the-mill dice. And this is huge space in the box for like 1,000 cards. And this is a score tracker. It's a tiny punch card for the player marker. And then big square cards. The big square cards are the ones that actually go into the stained glass window. So I don't know, this huge empty space that has 10 cards at the bottom makes me feel like I've lost something somewhere. But I don't think I have. We have another pamphlet type thing, but what I wanted to show off was the comparison between Sagrada and Runica, because Sagrada has these super default dice, and you're putting these super default dice into, well, that was actually really easy to close compared to the other one. Super default dice into this super nice board, alright? And then Runica next to that, fucking flex the muscles, which has a really nice divot on the side. The boards from Runica, right, which is not as probably crazy custom as the Sagrada ones maybe, but has this really nice thing. And if you count this as part of the board itself, because that's how it's supposed to be, right? This is very similar, where you're drafting the colored dice, you're putting it into the spot where it is, and then it matters where it is in relation to stuff like that. And it looks magic, or whatever is the intent that they're going for. But comparatively, Runica has these fucking gorgeous dice that has custom symbols on each side, and they're really, really high quality. And so what's interesting to me is that Runica is a mid-level game compared to Sagrada. Sagrada's like sold millions. You could probably find it in any fucking store that you go into. And yet, this one has such a more ingenious design to its components. Now, I want to quickly check something, because I might have something else cool to show off. I'm not sure if I've... Yeah, what kind of a state is it? But I think it will be good to show off. I think it's actually been replaced by other things now. Shit. Because I reused the box for something else. Maybe the other one is still around. 1 second, friends. I'm busy fucking around. Open up. Yeah, perfect, okay. Now, this is really interesting. This looks like a board game. This is the box. So I don't know. Whatever this game actually, it doesn't matter, because this is a manufacturing company sample where they take stuff from things that they're already producing and they put it together to show off what kind of stuff they can do. So this box is just from another game. It's a standard telescopic box. And then inside, they're using the exact same vacuum insert. And I think there's actually stuff underneath it as well. There is. And they've just filled up this box with goodies. Alright? I'm just going to kind of tip it out onto the table here, and we're going to go through it one by one. Okay, so each of the different types of cards has a note in the back that tells me about it. So these are 280 GSM grey core. We've got a blue core one, white core, black core. So black core is what Magic the Gathering uses. It's probably the most sturdy one. This is one with a linen finish. Does it say linen? No, it doesn't say linen. It just says the thickness, which is quite nice. I don't think there's much of a point in pulling them out and showing the differences, because you just won't be able to tell. This is 300, so white core with linen. Right, this one actually says that. And we have PVC cards as well. So contacting a manufacturer, you go, hey, I'm trying to build this thing. Have you got a sample? And they send you out something like this. You look at all the different pieces and you go, well, actually, this is the kind of size that I need, or this is the kind of thickness that I want, right? And that's just for cards. This is for cards. So I think this one is from HJM or Lucky or something. Maybe, I don't remember. The one that I personally use is HJM. They're my favorite. No, something different. So here we have a bunch of specially cut punch card. At the back is mostly discs. At the front is some more irregular shapes. Like there's a guy that has legs there or something. And it kind of shows you what they can do. They've got some, whoops, a bit high. Default meeples, right? This is a dice that is, it's like a cloudy, almost transparent color that has a gold inlay. It's actually really nice. But it's not a whole D&D set, it's just one dice. This is another one. And I think they're trying to be like a cloudy crystal kind of design. This is the same gold inlay, but it's white instead. We have a D20, that's kind of a more solid piece. Is it actually a whole set? I don't think so. I think I'm missing the smaller ones, like D4 and stuff. We have a Parcheesi piece. It's kind of rare. You see a lot of them in games these days. We have a custom printed. Is that just a nothing? What the fuck? With swords on it. I mean, you probably can't see the swords. There's one, two swords. This one has two swords and a gear. Swords, but the back, on the back is blank. There's no indent, but the way that the swirling colors align makes it look like there's a 1 on it, which is super confusing. We've got groves. I don't know what groves are. They are like hexagon cut. No, is it punch card? I don't think it's punch card. They probably cut it there rather than sending it to you. We've got, oh, it's got a thread. We've got something here. I don't know what the fuck this is. It has a hole and you can thread something through it. Maybe it's to show nothing happens. Nothing happens with what? Oh, on the dice. Probably, but just the way that the paint or the thing that they've molded into it makes a shape sucks. Someone's going to look at that and go, what is this? I don't know what this is. This is another thing, it's a Mickey Mouse shape, except it has the same hole to thread a bead through it. These are discs, just wooden discs, pretty common. So this was the one, I want to say from Lucky. I got another one that was much bigger. The box is like this big, same size as the Sagrada box. And it had miniatures. It had, I think I still have some of them in my box. I'll see if I can pull out some of the miniatures for you to have a look at. Because what's going to happen at some point, one day, Steve D, multi-award winning game designer Steve D and close personal friend of mine, are going to run a show on this channel where we literally throw out a fucking pile of components and we build a game and we talk about how building a game works and all the different stuff that we do, and it's a little bit like a tutorial. But these are fucking fantastic for anyone that is keen on building a board game. It gives you ideas on components that solve problems that you had no idea that you had. I've done it before. I've gone to my guy, Jerry. He's my man on the inside. I've gone, Jerry, this is what I'm trying to do. And he's like, yeah, sure. I literally have a thing that does that. What about this component? I don't even have to make a mold for it because it exists already. Okay. Let's see if I can find the miniatures. I have this gigantic box of junk. Oh, these might be cool to have a look at. But I put all my board game design stuff in there. Lots of random different components. Some copies of my games. That looks like a toothbrush. I don't think I particularly need a toothbrush. That's other card games. I'm not seeing the miniatures in here. I'm hoping that it will be obvious. Okay, that's some Game Crafter stuff. That's kind of cool. That's cool. Discs. What's here? Ooh. I think that's 3D printed stuff. Some discs. A woman. I swear to God, I'm not gone. I'm just off screen. Okay, I didn't find the miniatures. That I wanted to show off. I don't know where I put them, but I found some other stuff in my bag of goodies that I can show off. Alright, we've got, this was 3D printed by Alan Cheshire using an STL file that he found online. It's old now, it's 6 years old now. This holds up pretty well. This I was using as a player marker in my game Spirits of Cardimension. It's not back when 3D printers weren't super amazing, the detail wasn't crazy, but I don't know. You can see it's kind of a lady holding a lantern. We've got backgammon pieces, which is a wooden disc that has a groove. I can't even really see the groove. There's a groove cut into it. I have a bunch of these. This is a woman. A random meeple that came in one of my samples. Wasn't fit with the game. These are from Ascension, one of the expansions for Ascension. What is interesting about these is this particular crystal, the white one. I don't know if you can really see its shape that well, but it's a default. It's a completely default piece that you will see show up in a lot of places. Whereas these eggs are not. And there's a big one and a small one. So the small one's a little bit more yellow. It looks like a fish oil tablet. I haven't seen them anywhere else. They're pretty unique. I really like them. And this one also has big red gems in it, but I've at some point stolen them to use them somewhere else. A fucking garden variety sand timer. I have 5 of each different times. 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. These are actually really good. There's actually a lot of good board games that use sand timers. I got them because I had an idea about stuff. This is my game, Castles of Calira. This was also made by Longpack. Now, Longpack made Runika, the game that has the high production quality that I've been like frothing about all morning. Now, this is fucking impossible to open compared to the other games. Because I need to dig a hole in it with my finger. Right. This one is one that I've opened already and already taken a lot of the stuff out of. But as you can see, we just made the art on the side wrap up around rather than having a differentiated bottom and side part of the box. And it does the same for the lid. And it wraps up and keeps going. And then all of the cards have a distinct brown outer border. I don't know if I can make that more obvious or not in the way that I'm holding it. Maybe on the back you can see it a bit better. Has the distinct brown border. Now, basically none of these have really any printer drift, which is super impressive. Whereas if you see stuff from the Game Crafter, I've gotten things a few times and I've been like, oh, shit, I should have given myself a bigger space for a bleed or whatever. That needs to go back in the fun box. We've then got, this was another sample sent to me. This was part of a 3D printing service whose idea was to try and make components for board games 3D printable. As far as the production quality goes, these are all really nice, but these are all just like kind of default ones that they had. There's a few discs with symbols on it. There's like the most obvious one there is like the crate, a big beige kind of colored crate. But the problem is that the average customer is not going to see this and think that it's a high production quality thing compared to some of the other crazy shit that we have in here, which is kind of difficult to like really go all in on that. You'd think they'd add a ribbon or something and put it between the two layers of the box so you just pull the string instead of having to use your finger and nails to pull it apart. Some do have something like that. Some of them have like the bottom of the lid goes like this, so that you can hold the bottom of the box and grab the top and pull it apart. For the smaller ones, it's really good. With the bigger telescopic ones, when it's actually heavy, if you just hold it and pull it up, it should fall out, and it's fine. But I'm particularly special and struggle to do these things. Now, this is Game Crafter components. Now, I really, really like the Game Crafter, and this was a game that I built just to kind of test out what the tiles look like. This is a laser cut hex piece I don't know if you can really see the art on that super well or not, but it is quite nice. The colouring and the ink is really, really good. And the back has a number on it. It is not 65, it is 29. And I made this game that had all these different tiles and stuff, and I never ended up doing anything with it. These are the default dice that they have. Rather than making the dice, they will just buy a lot and have it on hand, and then you add that component that exists to their game. Same goes for these acrylic meeples. They're actually really nice, quite transparent. It looks like something Haribo would make. You just fucking eat it. This is a Magic the Gathering dice. It's the Dominaria set block spin down life counter. I don't know why that's in this bag. This was a project that I built because I had a cool idea on what I could be doing, and it got scrapped. I have lots of these, but and I'm sure a lot of other designers have a similar journey. They'll make something and scrap it, and it will be like them learning part of a journey and will reuse part of it later, or for like me, have components sitting around that I can steal from later, or stuff like that, or art assets I can just completely reuse later. Okay, now it's time for the big finale. I'm gonna put these all back into my box of shit, and then I'm gonna come back with the big sexy finale. Fuck, I grabbed too much stuff. I can't even hold it. Shit. I'm dropping it everywhere. I refuse to make 2 trips. Someone's gonna clip this and you just watch me fucking around with backgammon tiles for a week. Alright. Now this is the most expensive game that I own. It weighs as much as I do, and it's probably the highest production quality game that I own. This is Blood on the Clocktower. Now, like I mentioned earlier, it has the same kind of big book motif where it's got this is the kind of the page. It's actually so fucking heavy to hold like this. That's the front cover, but unlike Runika, I don't know if you can kind of see where the light catches it there. This actually has fucking raised edges like a cover of a book, right? It's kind of insane. I'm confident that it's just going to get damaged over time. The way that it lines up is pretty close. Looks pretty fine. I'm going to take the lid off. It's going to take no time at all. Now, what's interesting about this box compared to the others, it's about the same thickness, maybe skinnier than Moonshell, actually. It has an extra thick backboard, right? And the inside is felt. And the reason why the inside is felt is that the different character tokens and stuff that you use have felt on the back. And when you're playing the game, it's used by the storyteller, the person that runs the game, like this. It's not flat. People can look into it. They don't need to see it. It's supposed to be hidden. So it's kind of like this. And so the felt on the felt stops them from sliding and moving around too much. So pretty much every component in this game, rather than being cardboard on both sides, has felt on the back side. Okay, we've got I want to say satin bag with embroidering. There's just probably zero chance you can actually see that on the camera because it's so dark. It's black embroidering on purple. You would never notice it. You would literally never see this. And this one in particular is holding, and you can ASMR fuck around with the bulldog clips. There's bulldog clips that hold the 2 sections together because you hold it as a whole piece. I think there's other little bits in here as well. Oh yeah, the Night Shroud tokens are also plastic. My personal preference would have been a single string felt bag like Runika has. This is the one where you keep tokens in it. This one has the town and the Ghost of Vote tokens in it. It's the same, but it doesn't have embroidering on it. No embroidering on this one. And is satin. And is super dark. Okay, I've kind of, when I open this and close it again, I don't know if I've ordered it in a particular way because there's no insert. Everything just kind of fits, I guess. I don't know, like they've made sure that the particular boxes are the correct width, but there's still extra space for the bags and stuff to go in. And we've got the game, just like That Time You Killed Me. That Time You Killed Me has 4 modules in it that you play in order. This has 3 and some change modules, right? Where we have the like kind of the base, simple one, the learn to play the game, play trouble brewing, and then you've got 2 advanced ones, and each one has their own list of characters that doesn't share any characters between them. And then as a this is a game I kickstarted as well. As a Kickstarter benefit, you get a whole bunch of these more advanced ones that you use to build custom sets, combinations of characters from what you like, which is, it kind of gives you much more versatility and replayability in playing the game. Now I've just pulled out the boxes. Each of these boxes is just filled with more of this type stuff, so I don't really need to open it and have a look at it because it's nicely organized and I'll fuck it up. We've then got all of the what they're called the scripts. This is a humongous chunk of stuff, right? Now this is feels like a thick plastic card or maybe PVC, but it's super solid. I could sneeze onto this and wipe it off and it would not, I wouldn't care, it would be fine, it wouldn't be damaged. Let's see if I can show you a closer look at the coloring. You get your list of characters, each of them has their own unique symbol, and the actual way that it's all laid out, all the different art and stuff, and it's really nice. But what's unique about this is that it's super thick. I honestly don't think I could rip one of these in half if I tried. Which is good. When you're playing the game, you hold one of these scripts on your person as like a reminder card, and it's always in your hand and you're fiddling, and you're part of the playing the game doesn't really involve this component, but you're holding onto it, and so it's quite easy. And I have seen in the past where it gets damaged over time and stuff like that. Now, those sheets I just showed you are slightly smaller than A4, and now I believe these are A4. Now these are the night sheets, which is imagine a DM screen with info on it. The box is the DM screen, and the night sheets is the info that you need for the particular section that you're playing in. Rather than having it written on the inside like a DM screen would, it's like a thing of reminders. It has night sheets that you would set up in the second one, and you can what we call pips, but there's little pieces that you can put next to each one to remember which ones you actually need to pay attention to. Okay, we now have the rule books, and there's a shitload of them. The same, 2 staples, nice art front and back. This one is about the same thickness as the Moonshell one. Actually, it's not as thick as the That Time You Killed Me, but I think, yeah, Clocktower was Pandasaurus as well. But I don't think that they needed the thicker card, even though the booklets are A4. This is like, I don't know, me just kind of flicking through looking at stuff. Let me see if I can find a generic rule book, because I want to find the details thing and see if it mentions Pandasaurus. So each different script has its own rule book, which I put them in the wrong order. And we also have this really thick board. Ooh, it's got cool art on the back too, right? Thick board. And on the thick board, you would place tokens that look like the felt ones on there, and that indicates a player sitting at the table, sitting in the game, and you use that to track whether they're alive or dead. Let me put that back on the bottom. Now I'm going to quickly look through the rule book, which is fucking humongous, because I want to find that's a glossary at the back, which is fantastic. But what I want to find is credits to see if it lists Pandasaurus as the manufacturer. Script tool, how to make friends, how to lose friends, how to influence people. This is more about the game than about the people that made the game. Interesting. Oh, here we go. Credits are in the front. Okay. This is another Australian game that went big on Kickstarter, which is very cool. But it doesn't mention the manufacturer, which is fair enough. But that is Blood on the Clocktower. Now, this one is leaps and bounds ahead in production quality compared to the other games I have shown today. And as you can see, there's a lot more just in the box. But it's also double and a bit the price tag. But a lot of it is just cardboard punch card. So all these tags and stuff, this is all punch card. But the punch card has art on one side, and then rather than art on the back, it has felt glued to the back of it, and you punch it through, which is very cool. And then we have, and the rest is either the plastic card, which is what I think it is. I think it is PVC or plastic card, sheets, or rule books, which is also plastic, not paper. And then cardboard. It's all plastic and cardboard. But you don't have anything crazy like miniatures. You don't have anything too ridiculous when it comes to building a game. They've just taken what exists and done a very, very high quality version of it. The components itself that the game needs to run is nothing. You can play the game with nothing if you can remember everything that's happening. But then you have all these things to keep people immersed in the game, keep people aware of what's happening. It has no table presence because it doesn't sit on a table. It's set up in pieces around the room, which is what I think makes it unique as well, where you're not sitting here interacting with something directly in front of you. You're sitting here holding a reminder sheet that, I mean, if you've played enough times, you don't really need to look at. And then you're talking to another person. And the way that you play the game is you're talking to another person about what's happening in the game. So you're constantly being reminded about what's happening. And the storyteller who's running the game needs to know everything. So this is all really for the storyteller to know what's going on. And so that you could have a low production quality of this game and it would still be fine. You could still play it exactly the same. For years, we had falling apart copies of this game with stuff missing and stuff broken, and we were running games with locally just fine, right? But something like Sagrada that needs the dice, you're drafting a component, you're holding a thing. Runika, which has the rotating disc to keep track of stuff, and it's necessary to have a high production quality of such a thing. This is more, I would say, a collectible than a necessity in why the production quality is so high. But I also think that it wouldn't have been the success that it was in the same way. If they released a thing and they're like, this is the smaller, shitty version of it, I think people would have still chosen to go and buy the bigger, more deluxe version of the game because it looks very good. And it adds to the experience. And the one component that I haven't shown you is that it comes with a fucking display stand. And it currently sits overlooking my lounge room. But the stand is also important to how the game plays. Did I really mess that up? What the fuck? I bumped it and now it's ruined? There we go. I accidentally pulled the stand apart when I picked it up. Okay. But that is everything that I wanted to show off today. That I wanted to walk through some other board games in my collection. I wanted to talk about what the different manufacturing quality and stuff looks like, and I wanted to look at, especially like the manufacturing sample that I've got, and have a look at what the different choices that these people have made when they're building these games and all this kind of stuff, so you can get kind of an idea and a comparison on what the kind of the range is. And what I think is really interesting is that some of the higher big name manufacturers can pull out these really, really cool components and stuff like that and do all these wonderful jobs. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that game is going to be better, or that game is going to be more inventive with the things that it's using in comparison. And so you as a creator, when you're building something, you could build something just as spectacular on the Game Crafter. They have a lot of options for custom components. And people are usually like, this is for prototyping only or whatever. But so what? Build your fantastic prototype in the Game Crafter. Talk to the manufacturer that you're probably going to work with because they do the right MOQ or whatever. And look at what your options are. Look at what you can do. Look at what injection molds they have already. I built a game that looks exactly like Connect 4. It uses wooden discs and the Connect 4 tower, right? And I go to my manufacturer, this is what I'm trying to build, is we make that already. All I have to do is put this other thing in there. I'm like, that's great. That's so easy. Which is kind of like how Sagrada works, right? They go, all we need to do is make this custom board that the dice sit in. It's the one bit that makes everything work. And then we print cheap cards, we buy cheap dice, put them all in the box. That's it. And so when you know kind of what you're putting together, what your options are, it gives you a lot of freedom in the creativity space to build a really cool product. And I think Clocktower is a fantastic example, because if you have a look at the Kickstarter updates that they have on their channel, there's a lot of the times when they're like, we're going to Panda and we're getting feedback. They're sending us the print sample, and we're looking at what our options are, because we need it to function in exactly this way. It needs to be held by a person with one hand. It needs both of the halves to be able to be held by a bulldog clip and not damage, and still hold everything and not be flimsy and all this kind of stuff. And they've really nailed that part of it. It functions exactly how they want. But that's the thing. It's much less like I pitch my idea to the manufacturer and they build it and sell it, and that's the whole thing. There's a lot of with my game, Castles of Calira, that very small box that I showed you. The thing that I sent them initially was much bigger, and they went back to me and they're like, "Look, you don't need this much size to fit all these components in it. We're going to try this really small one." I'm like, okay. And so you kind of have options with what you're trying to do, and when you're looking at all those other examples and stuff like that, it can inspire you to want to make something. I recently played a whole bunch of roll and writes where you have a pen and you have like a rip-off sheet that you write on for notes or whatever, tick boxes or put numbers in, and that made me go, oh shit, I want to make a whole bunch of stuff like that. That's a really cool idea, And I think that there is something to be learned at looking at other games and looking at the manufacturing process, because it tells you what the upper limit is. Because surely there's board games that could exist where the manufacturer could build something that has not been built before, and it wouldn't be that expensive or that difficult to do, I think that there's a lot of room for that kind of a thing. And that's kind of what I'm excited about. And I think Runika is a fantastic example of that, where they have a modular board for each player. They have all these custom components, all this kind of stuff that works really, really well. And hopefully at some point we'll play that on stream, maybe. But just today I wanted to kind of walk through some stuff, do a little bit more tutorial stuff. This is like a fucking direct to YouTube kind of a video. And I wanted to try and start doing some more board game content and start doing some more devlog and tutorial type stuff. And I thought that this was a cool way to start, because I get to show off some of the things in my collection. But that's it from me today. I might stream some Valorant later on. I'm not sure. We'll see. But if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. It makes me very happy. It makes me feel like I'm not wasting my time every day living this grind. And check out my Twitch channel. It's TTV Cutlass Board Games, the same as the YouTube channel. You can find me on Twitter at Cutlass Game. Find me on Instagram. I post pictures when I'm playing games these days. I've cut back on a lot of the erroneous reposting and art junk that I was posting before, and I hope that you can find some interesting and exciting stuff to show off. You can see some cool gameplay for some cool games, highlighting some stuff from Australian creators. Of the stuff that we showed today, we've got Blood on the Clocktower, Australian. That Time You Killed Me, Australian designer. Runika, Australian. Really, really proud to see a lot of the local boys showing up in my collection. Alright? So hopefully that's going to be some stuff that we have for the future, and I'm kind of excited about that. So if you did like this, you found this interesting, please let me know so I can do more stuff like this. But that's going to be it from me today, and hopefully I'll catch you all later.